promised, obviously your questions have come in, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased about that, so thank you to everybody that asked me a question. So basically today I'm going to run through the questions that I've had and also give you a bit of an update of how the build is and where I am and what's left to do. So I've actually basically typed everything out so I can remember everything, but we'll start with the questions. So had some good ones. First one from Bandit Nev. Thanks Bandit Nev for that question. Do you YouTube for love or money? Interesting question. No, I don't do it for the money. It is purely for the love of and enjoyment of actually doing this. I build bikes because I want to. I fiddle with bikes, I maintain bikes because it's my passion. So it's definitely not for the money. The money, obviously if the money came later on, it does help because obviously it will help me with basically the accessories that I need, like buffing wheels and compounds, paint, sandpaper, etc. Obviously I'm on Patreon as well, so I do get a little bit from Patreon, so obviously again thanks to the patrons that support me. But no, definitely not for the money. It is purely because I love doing this. I enjoy doing this. So thanks for your question on that one. Next one is Mega Kuntash. Have you ever been to the Isle of Man on a race weekend? Unfortunately not. It's a place I've always wanted to go, but unfortunately in this country when the race weekend actually happens, it is primarily the Isle of Man's main tourism is the Isle of Man TT races and the classics, the Derby, the classic TTs as well, and Derby. So unfortunately they make it very expensive. It's the trip up to from here to basically Liverpool, which is a couple of 100 miles. Then it's the boat across from Liverpool to the Isle of Man, which is on the Steam Packet Company, and they seem to double and triple their prices, obviously because that's their main trade. And then obviously trying to stay on the island, you've got to book at least a year in advance, which does make it awkward. So no, never been, really want to, but as I say, it is purely, a lot of it is down to the expense. A friend of mine did it a few years back and basically said he could have had 2-3 weeks in Spain for the price it cost to go to the Isle of Man for a week. But obviously the experience of watching the bikes, that kind of takes over. But one day I'd love to go, so hopefully in the future, but no, never been. Where are we? Someone. He asked actually 3 questions, so thank you someone. Do you ever think of doing a live chat? Not something I've ever thought about. I'd need to look into that. Obviously, with the subscribers I have dotted basically across the world, I believe that, I mean, some of you are in Canada, some of you are in North America. Obviously, there are a fair few in the United Kingdom. I've got a couple in Australia. It's basically tying it up with the time zones. Obviously when my videos are actually released, I release them at 6 o'clock in the morning UK time on a Wednesday and a Saturday. So for some of you it's actually midnight the day before basically. But it's probably something I'll have a look at, so thank you for that. Your second question. How many bikes do I have? At the previous moment in time, I have 4. I've got the XL1000 Varadero, which is my daily rider. I've got an ST1100 Pan-European, which is basically touring. So me and the missus can actually just jump on and go. We used to do a lot of touring on the Varadero. Obviously it's an adventure style bike, it's quite high. We're not as young as we used to be, so we preferred something a little bit lower down, especially for the wife, so she can get on and get off easy. So we bought the ST1100. So that's 2 of the 4. Obviously the Hayabusa, that's number 3, which hopefully should be finished quite soon, but I'll bring you up to date in the build update later on. Number 4 is, it kind of ties into your next question. What would you like to do next for a bike? Well, the next main project bike to do is the bike that I've had for a few years sitting in pieces. Is a 1977 Z650B1. That is my 4th bike. And that is going to be, after I finish the Busa, I've got a couple of bits to do on the ST11, and then I'll be starting the Z650. So that is the next bike to do, as I say, which I previously owned. So that's the 4 bikes I have. So I hope that kind of answers your questions 2 in 1. What bikes do I have and what bikes am I doing next? So the Z650 is the next bike. Right, next question is from David. What one bike would you have if money was no object? That was a tough one. I think my favourite all-time bike that I'd love to have, surprisingly enough, is probably a Kawasaki Z1, 1973. There's something about the bike, I don't know what it is, it's probably sort of the old school look. But I think that will be the top bike that I'd love to own. I mean, I've owned a lot of bikes in my past. There's a lot of bikes I favour. The XL1000 Varadero is a great bike. That is really good, but I own it. The Hayabusa, again, another fantastic, iconic bike, really. But I have one. But I'd say the Z1 1973. It's a piece of art. It's a beautiful. For me, it's a beautiful classic Japanese bike, which is, but they are very expensive. So that's probably the one I'd love to own. So thank you for your question. Where are we next? 1157 John Boy. Thanks for your questions. Again, 2-part question. What do you do as a day job? It was like, okay, it's not really something that's related with the channel or about bikes, but fair enough, I'll answer the question anyway. My day job is I'm actually a purchasing manager for a large UK retailer. So I sit in an office and stare at computer screens all day. Nothing too exciting, but that's what I do for a living. So that's why it actually limits me. Obviously, you know, I do a lot of buying, purchasing, etc. So that it limits me to how much time I've actually got free. And the second part of your question, what am I worried about electrics? Interesting question. Excuse me. Electrics, I think, it's always something on bikes that people aren't overconfident with. And I think I've said before, I can do a majority of things. I learn as I go, and I think I've always shied away from electrics. It's always been one of them ones, it's always lots of colours, lots of wires, diagrams are a bit confusing for me. I probably just look at too much. I look at massive amounts of lines and wires on a piece of paper, and it just freaks me out. As I said, during the summer I need to actually start learning. I've got some friends that are good with electrics. I need to start learning off them and learning actually to do it myself. I've managed to do it with everything else, so it's time and confidence in myself to actually learn it. I mean, many people, which is fantastic, have said, look, you know, I'll help you. I really appreciate that, but I really need to learn it for myself. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's just one of them grey areas that everybody's got something that they're not too sure of, or they won't do, or they'll give to a mechanic to do because they're not quite. Electrics is one of them for me. I can reroute electrics and replug things back in, which is probably easy for some people. But moving on to actually rewiring in something or connecting wires in, it's something I'll learn. So I hope that answers your question. So thanks for that. And last question, Surrey Rider. Thanks for your question. Do you have any plans to build a brat or cafe style bike? And if so, what bike would you choose? Good question. It's not something I've really ever looked at, brat or cafe. I like cafe. Brat is just, for me, a modern take on a cafe. Unfortunately, at the moment, cafes have been, for me, done to death. There's so many people doing cafes, there's so many out there. I mean, it is an interesting concept. It is something maybe I'll look at down the line, but as yet, probably not. And what bike would I choose? For a cafe, probably the popular one that springs to mind is probably a 70s CB750. I could have said a 250, 350, possibly, I don't know. It's not something I've really looked into. Obviously the thing I have to worry about is if I was going to build a cafe for myself, its size. You know, I'm not short, but I'm not overly tall. I need something that basically matches in with my size. I don't want to look stupid riding a little 125 or a 250, etc. So it would probably have to be something 450, 500 upwards, but CB750. But again, the prices are rising, so it depends what came around at the time and what I really wanted to do with it. So it's a possible for the future. I will keep that in mind. So I hope that answers all your questions. I mean, thank you, as I say, 1157 John Boy, Someone, Mega Kuntash, Bandit Neff, Surrey Rider and David. Thank you so much for your questions. They were good questions, and I hope that answers them for you. Right, while we're on the topic, it's just basically I wanted to get in my own mind whereabouts I am with the Busa and how much is actually left to do. And actually there isn't that much left to do. It was surprising when I actually jotted it all down. So obviously today has been covering the Q&A answers and obviously in a basically a build update of what's left to do. And it's the niggly small little jobs, and obviously I've still got painting to do as well. So, and as you know, painting, it takes an age while you're waiting for paint to dry and trying to find other things to do while you're actually waiting for paint to dry. Obviously you can't create any dust because obviously I'm only in a garage. So, but basically a quick rundown of what's left to do, and then I'll show you what bits I've managed to get done on the bike during the week. So I've still got to rub down both fairing panels, primer them. Obviously I need to look at the actual infills. Unsure whether to actually just clean them up or actually paint them. Whether I paint them black or whether I paint them to match if I've got enough paint on the flip paint. Not sure on that one. Another video, I need to look at the rear end. It's basically, I need to sort out a brake torque arm, fit the rear brake hose, fit the rear brake fluid reservoir, reassemble the foot peg and hanger, extend the wiring on the rear brake switch, wire in the tail tidy, fit the chain, fit the sprocket and bleed the brake on the rear. I also need to then move on to base coat of the fairing panels. And then start working through the bike, I need to tighten all the shock linkages up because all of them are very loose in there at the moment. Fit the idle screw, fit the clutch line, bleed the clutch. I've still got to make some brackets for the front mudguard. Fit the brakes, brake pads, brake lines, and then bleed the front brakes. Then I can move on to top coat of the fairing panels. Tidy up the electrics in the front. I need to refit the overflow bottle. Refit the overflow bottle and the hose. Give the engine a good clean down. I can then move on to fit the nose cone. Well, fit the headlight and the wiring. Wiring the indicators. Brand new mesh on the intakes. Fit the nose cone and polish the nose cone. I'm actually finding it easier to actually polish on the bike rather than polish the individual bits. I I can then move on to clear coating the fairing panels, clamp the exhaust can, fit the seat, check all the fasteners, and then I've got to look at sorting the mirrors. Do I stay with the standard mirrors, or do I go for some aftermarket mirrors, or do I blank and just blank plates them? Then I'll probably move on to, I'll probably have a bit of a gap basically while I'm waiting for paint to dry again. It may be, I may take a ride out depending on the weather, or I'll look at obviously talking about the future project, start getting you involved in that and start getting some ideas. It is going to be a ground up restoration, so the engine's got to be completely stripped, rebuilt, which is again new territory for me, so that should be interesting. We're literally going all the way down. There's a new cam chain needs fitting, and then basically clean everything, paint everything, rebuild. Back onto the Busa again. Obviously once the fairing panels have actually dried, then I can, again, I might be fitting mesh to the inners of the fairing panel, fit the fairing and polish, and then basically the last bit, which should be hopefully, I'm hoping this will be done in about 4, 6, 7 weeks ish. Hopefully we're looking middle to end of April. The final bit will basically, I'd like to do a review on the build, get your feedback, how you think it's been, how you think it's gone, has it been helpful, etc. Wheel the bike outside for probably the first time in some time. Start her up and hopefully don't annoy the neighbours too much, and then I need to do a bit of a photo session on it, just get some photos and stuff so I can obviously post them social media, etc. So that's basically what's coming up. You know, I hope these videos are informative for you and they're helping. As I say, I'm getting great feedback each week, so obviously keep your comments coming. But basically, last thing of this video is, obviously I'll show you the tail unit now. That's all been polished up. It's come out really well, so I'm really pleased with it. So that's the next bit. Right, and there we go. I'm really pleased with how the finish has come up. The shine's come up really nice. Right, as I said, I hope that answers all your questions. As I say, keep the feedback coming. It's fantastic. It's really helping me. It's moving the channel forward. It's growing. It's growing at a nice steady rate each day, gaining views, subscribers, etc. So thank you to everybody that's basically supported me from the early days up until now, and welcome to the new subscribers. I hope you enjoy the previous videos. I hope you basically get some questions into me, ask anything you like. It's obviously, you know, I've learned as I've done this build, so it has been really good. As I say, really pleased with the questions you gave me, so thank you very much, and I hope that answered all of them for you. As usual, subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of every video, and links to other videos in the top left and top right of each of this screen. Again, thank you to patrons and everybody who's supported me. So join me again next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.